Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're having a marvelous day. This is For the Record, a podcast about the artists and for the artists. I am your host, Sunny David, and today joining me is the very awesome Sidharth Raveendran, the frontman of Pacifist, a member of Tadpatri Talkies, and an ex member of Gaia's Throne. Hi, Sidharth. How are you? How are you doing
Hey man,
today?
I've been good. I've been good. It's Thursday night,
Yeah, Thursday night. Such
waiting for
a
the weekend.
yeah. How is this lockdown treating you?
I mean, now it's. I was in Bombay at the start of it, and I'm now back to my house in Pune.
Right.
I'm originally from Pune. I moved to Bombay for work 5 years ago, and I actually have not left Bombay for a span longer than 2 weeks at the most. I've constantly been, held back and at the same time uh, busy in the hustle and bustle of just Bombay life, I guess. So
Makes
yeah, it's
sense.
a good welcome break.
True. It's been great for some, not so great for others. Depends on your
Yeah,
perspective, I guess.
yeah, and depends on how well, off you are and how much privileges you have as an individual as well.
Definitely. So, Siddharth, talking about you, I'd like to go way back. What was your introduction to music as a whole? Like, for my listeners, whoever's listening, I guess you all are familiar with Siddharth's work with Pacifist, with his other project that he had earlier, Gaia's Throne, and stuff. And like, so I'd like to know more about you, Siddharth. Like, what was your introduction to music?
So I mean, uh, fundamentally, I guess everyone goes back to what's available to them. At least that's how people discovered music 15 years ago, or give or take. Like I mean, I have been actively listening to music. Um, yeah, probably in that time span. So when I was in school and stuff,
Right.
and yeah, so back then what was accessible is what you would get to listen to, and then that would shape your taste, or you'd have a phase of listening to something and then that would change and move on or whatever. So I
Definitely.
mean, I guess a lot of common bands that I guess people were into and were listening to, nothing too different like from the rest, discovering bands like Linkin Park or Green Day or
Right.
Metallica, things like that. So you obviously start off with that. I had a huge, I mean, I found a very strong appreciation for like classic rock and like old school rock music and stuff. A lot of
Definitely.
collections that were handed down, burned on CDs, tapes with which had probably Eric Clapton on one side and Nirvana on the other. Uh, you got what you got and you heard what you could, and then you just grew from there, I guess. And obviously, like I heard more heavier music as I grew older because I was more curious, I guess, to explore styles for different reasons, or you know, for just
Agree.
to see how, and it's also interesting for me because I try and see how music evolved as like just guitar music has evolved over the years in particular. So
Definitely.
for me, that's like a personal uh, zone of interest. I mean, someone like Sam Dunn probably did it best when he went into the whole genre etymology and like
Mm.
how things influenced music in through the years of like say 50, 60 odd years of in the history of like heavy guitar music, that is.
Right.
So
Right.
these kind of things like obviously intrigued me and I was interested by that, and that led to a tunnel of discovery, over the years.
Definitely. I get it. It's interesting, because the more people I've talked to over the years, all have the same kind of common approach and background of music, burning CDs, listening to it in the car with their dads, stuff like that. So it's interesting that,
Right.
like, all of us, I guess, all of the musicians community in India, they come from a common place where, of course, we as kids or as common Indian families couldn't afford vinyl CDs or original CDs.
Yeah.
So all you could do is rip it off from the internet, burn it onto CDs, and jam it the entire day.
Absolutely. also depended on which part of India you belong to, because uh, even bootlegging and purchase of, like, say, what would be considered rare copies of bands and CDs and whatnot.
Right.
It really depended on which part of India you lived in. So, like, a lot of people, listeners in Bombay, for example, who have been listeners since like the late 80s or the early 90s, have found like copies of bands like Forbidden and, like, what would be otherwise considered non-mainstream or non-accessible. Like, it would be still easy to find, say, a Megadeth tape in the 90s if you lived in Bombay, but not so
Definitely.
much maybe if you lived in Pune. You'd have to really, really know where to hunt to get one.
Makes
So those
sense.
kind of things, even like even in Bangalore and stuff. So I think living in Pune, living in a suburb, like, in Pimpri Chinchwad and stuff, so that
Right.
really changes a lot of options and what access you have to music. So obviously, like, a lot of people will fall back on mainstream media, like, what plays on VH1, what plays on your radio, like, top 20 English lists and
Definitely.
stuff, because back then there was no dedicated English radio station. In fact, I think Pune still doesn't have a dedicated English radio. I mean, I think it's
Definitely.
just
I guess it's just
a
the
one.
after 10 kind of thing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
evening
yeah, yeah.
us on Radio One,
Definitely.
since they're a
Definitely.
partly BBC owned company.
Yeah, 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 definitely. So it's interesting you talk about this cultural difference within cities that are just like 150 kilometers apart. Does this show to this day, like when you're performing live or something, do you notice differences in, you know, heavy
So,
music culture or any
absolutely,
kind of
absolutely.
culture? Yeah,
So I mean, I think it, once again, it depends on which um, promoters you work with, or which promoters shows you attend and stuff, because that also dictates culture and like audience quite a bit. But definitely, like, in cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, the it has persisted for longer, like the whole music community.
right,
Even Delhi to some extent, but it's had its ebbs and flows from what I know of it. And I've not been too exposed to playing a lot of shows in Delhi. We've
right,
just played the one odd show last year, sometime
right,
around this year, this time of the year itself.
right,
So from what I have frequented, which has been mostly Bombay and Bangalore, which have their own thriving metropolitan, cultures, and over the years have seen their share of bands and, shows that come and go. So definitely there are things, nuances to each city's scene, and what they like and what they dislike, and
right, right,
what the promoters there like and dislike. And I and I think I've been interestingly on both sides of the fence, where I was probably in a very old school band when I started off, which was Gaia's Throne,
right,
and that found an audience which leaned more on, like, slightly more old school and more keep it, what do you call it,
Sit,
retro in that sense.
right, right,
Yeah, so those are the kind of bands we mostly would get clubbed with, and or would play alongside as well.
right.
Whereas it's a whole different thing with how bands are currently doing lineups and stuff, and all the shows that I've played with Pacifist in comparison to that. So yeah.
Right. And it's interesting, the differences in culture. Do you feel that that crept into your songwriting on Grayscale Dreams? I mean,
Culture.
I mean,
Uh,
comparatively, I would say, like in my experience, the life of living in Mumbai or Bangalore, compared to
okay, from
something
that
in
sense, yeah,
something in Pune,
right,
it's very, I guess it's very different for
absolutely.
to be concise. So how did that creep into your songwriting process?
Uh, so I think there's so there's some context to this. Like, in the sense, Gaia's Throne was active between, I think, 2012 to 2015, roughly, oddly. We were like around 3 years, 16 actually, I'd put it. So around 4 years we were active. We were like college kids back then and stuff, and I moved for work purposes, and then like we tried make the band work for a year while I was living in Bombay. But then, like, things fell apart, and like people moved on and moved apart and stuff. So
Definitely.
I had a very I had a personal inclination to probably not do certain things, because when I started out, in bands and stuff, I was pretty much like anything goes, because I was happy with the thought of being in a band, which is naive, and it's a starting point, right?
Yes.
So I in fact, Gaius Throne was not the first band I started off with. I had a band called Mickey Learns to Mosh. We used to do a lot of cover gigs and things like that. We did a Rage Against the Machine tribute night in Pune, which was unheard of at that point of time.
Right.
And then like found something interesting to do with Gaia's Throne, because I met this particular set of people with who possessed a certain, I guess, uh, you know um, uh, chemistry and a skill set and a songwriting chop. To
Definitely.
They had ready songs on which I
Yeah.
could sing, so it was convenient for me to latch on to an existing momentum that
Right.
a certain group had, and then I was like, okay, fine, let me add my bits to contribute in that. So Gaius Throne was not my band to begin with. It was not my vision. It was not my initiative. uh, and I just happened to be someone who joined them along the way, and like and stayed for pretty much since inception till the end of it. So with Pacifist, it was a very intentional, I guess, departure from all of that. And also I wanted to, since that was more oriented towards fantasy and sci-fi and things like that, which is, I think, a very fundamental root of heavy metal in general. And that's, like I said, it goes back to my first love, which was like older bands, classic rock, and then the eventual transition from that into like heavy metal, and like bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and the likes.
Yes.
So since that foundation kind of matched with, like, my interest matched with what this band was doing, and that naturally had a inclination for fantastical themes and sci-fi imagery and things like that. So we kind of adopted that, and like that was the world that existed for me, like when I was thinking of ideas and lyrics and things like that, or imagery for the band with Gaia's Throne. So Pacifist was a very distinct departure from all of that, because I consciously wanted to write music that was more personal, that was more uh, like linked to, I guess, some kind of personal truth. That was definitely way more aggressive and way more emotive. That being like the very fundamental, I would say, motivators behind. And I had a very distinct reason to start this band, because as opposed to like just casually being in a band, like how I was trying to do before. Like I had a particular intent and reason to start this band, and and what I wanted to do with the music. So yeah, I think, I mean, it's I would just say it's just growing up. So uh,
Definitely.
Gaius Throne was what I did when I was in a different frame of mind, and I guess there was some growing up to be done, and then Pacifist came into being.
Right. That's actually a very interesting approach or story, I would say. Well, do you plan on building on this exact vision more, or do you plan on taking it somewhere else with your next project with your band?
So yeah, man. I mean, like pretty much. Yeah. So the whole move to like the whole. I mean, okay, wait. Let me just rephrase this. Yeah. So when things changed for me in my life, I guess that was kind of bound to reflect with what I wanted out of bands, and like like being like, if I were to be in a band, what kind of music do I want to write? Is it necessarily this that I want to do, or is it something else that I wanted to do? Because I was also like I was playing guitar. I wanted to play guitar in a band originally. I was trying out a little bit, but then I like kind of like the my learning curve stopped, I think, at some point with the instrument.
Yeah.
And then I just settled with whatever came next. So I think I wanted to get back to that, so reconnect back with that. So that was another crucial aspect of of making starting Pacifist, because uh, initially, like, I used to jam with the band with, and I used to play guitar. I have written on the EP, like, at least like half of the songs have contributions from me, from a guitar writing point of view as well. So
Right.
that kind of became the like, me and Apurv basically are the principal songwriters in the band, that in that sense.
Right.
Like, as of the EP, and I think for some new material that will come out soon as well. So yeah, like, we've kind of split up those duties. I mean, now we do have like a second guitarist as well, with Ashish joining us, who's been an old friend of ours. I have known him since the Dirge time, like when they started out in Pune,
Right.
and they were
Right.
kind of peers to us when Gaia's Throne kind of sort of had a name for itself in within Pune. Dirge was just starting out, and then we kind of played shows together. We repped them quite a bit. They also went down to play Bangalore quite a bit. So I mean, like, yeah, that's pretty much like this whole how things work in this Pune Mumbai,
Right.
stream of
Yeah.
uh, I guess talent and music and people who
Yeah.
want to do this, and a lot
Right.
of it has changed over the years. So now it's very different from how things were when we were young and like younger and starting out 10
Mhm.
years ago, say in
Right.
2010.
Right. That the I want to bring light on that subject, saying change. So the advent of these event managing companies coming into the scene, how do you think has it affected the scene overall? Because I was talking to one of my mentors, Alex Cotino. He
Okay.
teaches me drums, so he was talking about how the scene has you know gone downhill since event managing companies have come out to give bands to clubs and pubs to play, and pubs and clubs
Okay.
are cutting down on the number of band members they want. For instance, like they prefer guys with a guitar and a cajon so that they could
Right.
pay them
Right.
less. So you do you see this trend uh, while you play live and while you tour around the country?
So I mean, I think that this all of this comes from really different walks of life. If you are a musician in India, there
Right.
is no such thing as one type of show, right?
Right.
And there's no such thing as one type of event organizer or promoter or whatever it is you choose to call them. So
Yeah.
I think his experiences, your mentor's experiences, must come from being like slightly more in a commercial booking sense, where acts that are commercially viable, which are easier to program in environments where the band or the music might not be necessarily the top priority for the venue, and even if it is, then it is accessibility to the music that is a top priority for the venue. So in these situations, I mean, once again, depending on there is a different economy for everything, right? There
Definitely.
is like your broke musician economy, then there is like a semi pro or an amateur musician economy, then you have like a uh, the pro level economy, then you have like
Yeah.
people who want to fly down international artists and do stuff.
Right.
So it used to be very straightforward. It used to be like, I guess 15 or 20 years ago, it used to be like you have local bands, and you have college shows, you have
Right.
sponsors going to college shows. You don't have so many venues, but whatever venues do the odd show every month or so, it is these same local bands that will play that show. They'll get the ticket sales, they'll split it amongst themselves, which is kind of how we still do stuff.
Right.
I mean, bands like split the gate entry costs, and I mean the ticket sales. If there's a promoter involved, the promoter is also like an equal uh, stakeholder in the whole activity, and that's
Yes.
how bands like us make money. It's not like we are also landed deals of like an assured a lot of money, and are covered for like travel and things like that. We mostly just try to break even if more often than not, and don't really get to break even also more often than not, unless it's like a really spectacular home night, and
Definitely.
you've and it's something that for a fact that you've programmed it well, you've promoted it well, and you can manage to not just break even but pay the bands involved. So we've done like a lot of DIY shows that follow this route, and we've managed to respectfully walk away with at least some amount of money that can help fund, if not your next recording, at least a couple of jam sessions down the line, or or maybe
Yeah.
costs to like travel to a nearby city to play the next show. I mean, that's the economy we work in, because we are a niche band that caters to a very niche crowd that is into a very particular type of music, which also demands a certain kind of, I guess, nerd, what do you call it, a dedication to it
Definitely.
for it to exist. I mean, otherwise
Yes.
it wouldn't. But I think in your mentor's case, I think he particularly might feel the pinch, because he might not fit into the either economy of the amateur single singer songwriter with the cajon, like a
Yes.
college student with a buddy who probably you know um, is doing this
Right.
because he can afford to right now, and it doesn't hurt him to earn just a few $1,000. But
Definitely.
him being a professional or a married man, or like with kids or something like on those lines, or if he has a business to manage, if he
Right.
has responsibilities in life, he would not want to settle for what a college student's getting paid for, right? But in the
Definitely.
eyes of a booking, like a promoter or like a local venue, um, that evaluation might be a little skewed.
Right.
So I mean, it depends on your valuation as an artist in this economy. Where do you see yourself at? What kind of shows you've played in the past? What kind of repertoire you have to your name?
Right.
And what kind of bookings do you usually do? Because that would most likely dictate what is fair and what you can make. If you are to make a living playing music. So it's a lot of things that would factor into it and decide that. So I wouldn't blame the boom in event organizing as a as an industry. In
Right.
fact, it has enabled some of my favorite things to happen, because I wouldn't have ever thought that there's this German band called the Ocean Collective. I never
Oh,
thought I'd get to see them live. I never thought they'd
definitely.
come down. And I remember like listening to this band while discovering like other related sounds, in like the in 2012 or 13 or something, when I was discovering Isis and Neurosis and bands like that, and I also chanced upon the Ocean, and
Yeah.
here we are, 8 years later, 7.5 years later, I'm actually seeing the band live, and I have goosebumps. I'm listening
Definitely.
to the so I mean, this is happening because of independent promoters who are hustling it out in the scene, and that's just one show. There's been dozens of bands that have come down to play club gigs, one-off gigs,
Definitely.
festival slots, even college festival slots.
Yep.
So many scores of bands that have visited India in the last 7 to 8 years, probably 10 years. Yeah, I would say the last 10 years itself. Yeah.
Definitely. Interesting perspective. That's correct. Interesting story with the Ocean Collective. So I guess they toured India last year. Last to
Yeah,
last
yeah,
year,
yeah.
I guess. Last to last year.
They came like in December, I think.
Yeah. So the
Or
thing
no,
is,
they came in Jan. Yeah, my bad. Yeah.
yeah. So the thing is, I listened to their album Phanerozoic
Mm-hmm.
on the Monday, and they played it on the preceding week on Friday. I was so bummed out when
Yeah.
I realized that they were there and I couldn't see them because I loved that album. I loved that album so much. I listened to it thrice in a single day.
Wow.
Amazing album. Great.
Yeah,
Interesting
yeah,
story.
absolutely.
Yeah. So talking about this local scene and the Indian musicians and stuff like that, what would you say are a current favorite artists in the Indian scene that you would like me or our audience to check out?
I mean, I think Unheard did a pretty good job of banding together all the, I would say, relevant contemporary acts that are there. So,
Yeah.
you should definitely check out. I mean, and all of them come from very different sounds and approaches. So, definitely, you could check out Dirge, you could check out The Earth Below, check out Orchid, now called Man
Yeah.
Eating Orchid.
Right.
Excellent band.
Right.
And you could check out some of our peers. I mean, we've always been the hardcore brigade. So,
Yeah.
Death by Fungi, False Flag. Definitely should check out the Riot Peddlers, who put out a new EP recently. But I mean, these are all buddies and like close friends who are also very good musicians and who put out great music and stuff.
Right.
But like, apart from that, I think outside of this, there might be like names that I'm missing right now, but like from the top of my head, I can remember like Trash Talk from Bangalore did a great job with their EP this year.
Yes.
um Another good band, I mean, like Bangalore's got another great band called um you know skips my name. Wait, never mind. I mean,
It's
there's a
fine.
whole list of bands that could probably get into,
Definitely. Definitely.
but yeah.
So, as a singer songwriter, for budding musicians or for people that dream to do what you are doing, playing live your own songs and stuff like that, what would be your advice for new people getting into this? That would include me as well. You've always been a great inspiration. So, I'd like to know what do you feel is a requirement or a necessary skill to possess to do all of this that you are doing.
So, I mean, a lot of it is not like an individual's doing. It's always a group effort, and it's also a community effort at one level. So, when you recognize that fact and you learn to respect that, I think a lot of doors open up. One, I mean, that's like a fundamental thing, I would say, like to how I look at. Um, if you want to play shows and if you want to put out releases and stuff, it's not possible without having a team that you can work with. And that does not just limit you to your band or your friends, who support you, but also includes a larger music listening community that is into creation of music, who support each other through like things like Bandcamp purchases and whatnot. So I mean, if you really want to be a part of culture, then I think you should engage with culture in meaningful ways. So that could be, uh, I mean, it really depends on what you want to do, right? I mean, as an individual. So some people are happy being uh, very devout listeners and supporters from the sides, but they can also discover that their interest and their love for say this music can help them do other interesting things, like say for example starting a podcast, which
Right.
happens to be in your case. And
Yes.
that's something I personally was also into, and I also tried to do that for the limited run that I had with Haram Koring.
Yes.
So we did the podcast for almost a year and a half, and I think that was one of my intentions, to talk to people, network with other like-minded musicians, get their perspective on things, and have fun. Most importantly, I
Definitely.
just wanted to have
Yes.
fun, talk to people. So there are things you can do. So I mean, that's one aspect of looking at it. But another thing would be like, say, writing of music and creating music. You need to know your strengths, your weaknesses, work on them, work with people who can do things that you can't, and then and offer what you can do best to
Definitely.
them, because that's how it becomes a collaborative effort. And you need to bring
Definitely.
something to the table and work on it, and work on things that you don't know how to do as well, so you can grow as a person and as a musician. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man. I think it's in that sense, India's band culture, I think, has evolved quite significantly than how things used to be, like, say, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago. They were simpler, more
Right.
straightforward. But
Yeah.
now, because we need to be smarter and like be very particular about how we choose to do things and approach them, it also teaches us a lot of things that probably previously like bands didn't necessarily pay attention or give importance to.
Right.
um, yeah, so that's every
Definitely.
musician will have their own what do you call growth and learning curve in this.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Definitely. I'd also like to ask you about the various endeavors you undertake. For instance, you are a part of Tadpatri Talkies, and recently I've been seeing your Instagram post, and you're taking up writing video essays. I suppose, yes.
Yes, that's
That's
the oldest hobby I guess I think I have had, just
Yeah.
writing stuff. So
That's quite interesting. I'm interested in knowing how do you keep taking out time out of your busy schedule, and how do you manage stuff, doing all these stuff, and not necessarily, you know, uh, half decently. You do them very well. Uh,
to
you're
the best of I can that I
right.
can.
So I would like to know, how do you, manage stuff, like what keeps you going, what inspires you to do all of this.
I mean, the thing is, these projects technically keep me going, right? So, and that's what I look forward to with my time and how I choose to spend it, or how I want to say grow in a certain direction or do certain things with my life and my interests. It's not like all things don't fire at once. It's not like all have work in the same pace or have the same um, intensity or in level of involvement even. So things fluctuate and vary from time to time. So like there was a phase when when Tadpatri Talkies was quite active, and that was what I would do quite a bit. But that kind of so and that was when we put out like the whole Garibi video, the album that followed, and like the small promotional cycle that went around
Yes.
that. And back then Pacifist was just a jam room band. We were just jamming, and I was figuring it out back then. So
Right.
we didn't surface much until after like all the Garibi hype died down, and I was like, okay, it's cool, like now I can transition into doing this. And that's when I want to do something serious and something that's close to me and personal and stuff.
Right.
So which is Tarpatri is also, once again, it's not my brainchild necessarily. I have been a part of somebody else's brainchild, and I have been the face of it,
Right.
for better or worse. So
Right.
that's been a fun experience in itself, that teaches me something else about, and from a very different walk of life, because YouTube comedy creator, being a creator and all of that comes with very different requirements and skill sets. So my role in Tadpatri is very, I mean, especially with Garibi, is very limited. I am just a performer. I'm a face for a character. I perform the character. But a lot of the writing work, a lot of the like video shooting, editing and stuff, I wasn't particularly involved in. I have done other smaller videos on the channel,
Right.
but not the Garibi videos in particular.
Right.
So that's, so like I said, my involvement there is very different. If that
Right.
was all I was doing, then I would have to be just doing that. But
Definitely.
since that wasn't the case, I could take time to do other things as well. And yeah, I think like with the band and with the podcast, like which was happening as of until last year, it was like a, see, it's an opportunity based thing, right? So you jam when you have a schedule to jam and figure when you want to be active with your band and play shows and stuff. And doing interviews with people is the, whenever you have the land the opportunity to do it. So whenever bands are in town, when they would come and play shows, and I'd set aside time to meet them and do an episode and stuff. So yeah, it's once again, it just boils down to how you plan your involvement in a project, up to
Right.
what extent,
Yep.
and how you can best utilize your time and energy into it. And does it feel rewarding or satisfying at the end of the day? Because if that's not the case, then things fizzle out, or no, just phase themselves out of your life.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty much how and I think it's common for all. It's not like I read some like a book to be ultra, you know, productive with my
Yeah.
time, or I have
Yeah.
some time management hacks and I'm some guru or
Right.
some shit like that.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, I've anything far away from it. I do things at my own pace, and I don't. I mean, yeah, that's and you have to set your pace.
Right.
And if you go too hard on yourself, which I have also been, you will suffer, and your end product will also suffer. So there'll be a lot of things that you will not then feel happy or satisfied with. So might as well not do that and just do things at your own pace. Do things that's possible for you, within your means, and that you can have fun doing, and then I think things fall into place.
Definitely. Definitely. Thanks, Siddharth, for talking with me today. It's been
No worries, man.
It's been great talking to you. I hope to see you back here frequently. It's
My pleasure.
interesting talking to you, and I'm sure you have many more anecdotes and stories to talk about. So thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me over, man. The pleasure's all mine. Cheers.
So that was Siddharth, and I had tremendous fun talking to him. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as well. Do not forget to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at For the Record India. And please let us know what you think about this episode. We'll be back with another amazing artist next week. So make sure you tune in. Until then, stay safe and take care and be good to each other.